I'm Jeanette.
Hi, I'm Missy.
Oh my goodness. You ready for it today?
Oh yeah, very much so.
We're back for some more good topics. We're going to talk about grief today. We had an interesting day today. And so we've covered a lot. So we're going to talk about ways of handling grief. If there is a timeline for grief after a loss. And just finding ways to remember the people that we've lost in our life who we cherish. And, what is our hope? What's our ultimate hope? Mm-hmm. So before the show, I said good grief after our today, because we say that sometimes. We use that terminology, good grief. It's an interesting day. And then you said...
There's no such thing as good grief. I said it's an oxymoron.
Okay. She says it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it. Let's kind of jump in. Grief, loss. Let me say this. You can grieve a lot of things. I know most people think of grief, and we associate that with death. A person has passed on, or in the physical realm where we can't see them anymore physically. We all have heard they live in your heart. We've heard they go to heaven, so you'll be okay. We keep up pictures. But then we can also grieve other things. We can grieve the loss of employment. We might have been employed at a job for a really long time and then have to transition into another or segue into a different career. We can just grieve that, being able to get up and participate in that. We can grieve relationships. We can have those losses because people are with us for seasons and then they leave us for seasons. So physically they could be here, physically here on earth. Maybe they move to another location or a part of town. You're not going to see them anymore. And I'm sad because you had that relationship that you had every day. You can grieve pets. Loss of pets. There are a lot of people grieving that. So grief can come in so many forms. Not really necessarily in the traditional form of what we think of. But let's talk about loss of loved ones, because that's the more common one, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. I think the hardest part of dealing with grief is dealing with the loved one right around, usually when it's like that first holiday or that first birthday or that first... or sometimes it might just be you're out, something you did together. And now the reality is I have to do this by myself, like gardening, or there was a certain TV program that we watched together, like every time I watched Wheel of Fortune, that was my mom's favorite show. That was her show. And I find myself, I watch it not as much as she did every day, but that was her 6:00 program. She was going to watch Pat Sajak, who's not there anymore, and Vanna White, that was her thing. And then, sometimes when I'm watching it by myself, I'm like, oh, I kind of grieve that. Tell me about some things that you grieve.
Well, definitely grief is not an easy stage. It is a stage. They have 5 stages of grief.
Oh, okay. I'm going to learn something today.
Well, I'm not dissecting into those at all. But,
okay.
You have anger, that you've lost someone or something, and usually that's your first reaction because you don't know really how to deal with emotional feelings. So we grieve several things. The grief of loved ones is really dear to our hearts. But we also grieve our clients. As you know, we have an agency in home, and sometimes we get really attached to the people we work with on a day-to-day, or even just talk to them, and then they go, and then you're like, wow, that person just
yeah.
left, you know. I don't care how old they are, how young they are. It's just a difficult thing, and a lot of times it comes with shock. You know, the very first time that you hear it, you know, sometimes it'll come as a shock, and you get numb all of a sudden. Shock and numb goes together. But again, once you identify that you're going through these stages of grieving, it's okay to grieve. You know, sometimes people will say, oh, it's okay, it's going to be okay, you know, you're going to see him in another lifetime or whatever. But in the same token, we have to be humans too, you know. Yes, we know we're going to see him again, especially if they were believers and you're a believer, you're going to see him again in heaven to eternity. But in the same token, you have to know that you're human and you will grieve. Even Jesus grieved for Lazarus when he thought he was dead. When Jesus knew, everybody knew he was dead. Lazarus was dead. 4 days dead. But he even, you know, wept. So it's normal. He was human, but also God in the same token. So again, you know, it's okay for people to grieve. But like you said, we're going to talk about what's the timing, you know. Again, there is a time season for everything. And if we are stuck in that motion where we do not come out of that stage, what does that look like for a human being? Is that even quality of life, you know, for that individual? So we want to tap into that. We're not the experts of counseling or anything as such, just for the record.
That's a great disclaimer.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm just a nurse. I'm a nurse by trade. And so, but just things that I've seen over the years from being in this profession, what it actually looks like. And I've had to experience it myself on multiple occasions, not just my mom, but my dad and my grandma and grandpa. So, but at those stages, when they passed before, I didn't really know a lot about it until, you know, I actually dived in and studied what it looks like to grieve, to be okay, as you grieve, you know, and it's okay. So.
You know, I worked as a teacher for about 30 years, and the last 6 years I taught kids with special needs, and I had the last 6 years I had a loss every year. I think it was hard. When I went through the last one, I knew I needed to transition because I couldn't get my feet under me. You know, like we'd start and, you know, something would happen, and my kids were medically fragile, some of them, but some of the timelines in which we thought, you know, and it's not for me to determine, but you know, my students didn't necessarily appear sick, you know, almost like typical teens in some instances with, you know, verbal, could hold conversations with them, seemed okay. But I think that last loss after 6, I just thought I need to transition out of this because there was so much sadness. But what I did was, like, I had a wall, and one year I put a wall up. I think when I got to year 3, I put pictures of them up. I started putting pictures. I had a wall. Just every time I had a loss, I put pictures up to remember them. And then we memorialized them by putting a brick in the ground, you know. And then we did one year a tree of life, you know, to try to remember good. So every year I try to come up with something that we could do something with the emotion, because the finality for some of my own students were really hard to process. Particularly, I was dealing with my young people with special needs. Some of them couldn't process death. I don't know if you can process that, you know, they're here and gone. We know it intellectually, but it was hard for them to process that. And so the way I could help them is if we had a place to go, or if we had a picture to look at, or a song, or a release, balloon release. I didn't do t-shirts, or I don't think I did a balloon release either. But I always try to do something that would bring attention to that individual. And the wall helped me a lot. The wall, because I could go in and every day I could see the pictures, 4 of them, you know, like I could go up, and I had a staff member pass too. So it was just the last 6 years were really challenging. I had good memories too with all of them, but I think just that it was so much loss, like boom, 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 boom. I couldn't catch my breath because I always had to be there for all of our young people, of our parents, all of our staff. It was just, so it's really hard for me sometimes to really kind of compartmentalize what that was for me to even process dealing with it, because I do love young people. I love children. Somehow we think it's supposed to be different for children versus the adults, but age, as you know, they're little graves and big graves, so something to kind of process and think about. What do you think about those kind of things, kind of ceremonial ways of handling grief?
I think it depends on the individual from day to day, because some people have to have a type of memorial. Maybe they have a picture they see every morning and talk to every morning, or however. And some people just rather just keep them in their hearts, you know. And, you know, as you know, sometimes people will not go to funerals, even though if their own mom or pops, when they pass, because they want to remember them from when they were alive. So it depends on the individual. At the end of the day, I don't think it's idolizing anything per se. Everything comes from the heart. So, you know, we do have to watch out for idols, and we can put people up there as idols, living or dead, you know. But I think if the heart intention is, I just want to remember this person every time I wake up, every time I look around, I don't know, it's probably effective for a lot of people. So I say do what makes you comfortable in moving on. If that's how you can move past that loss or that feeling or whatever. Because at the end of the day, you have to be okay in your own shell. But again, I definitely don't believe it's idolizing. But if it is a heart thing that you are idolizing this person, that is idolatry, by the way. So, and of course, God talks strongly about idolatry. So I think it's a heart factor. How do you navigate life?
There are some people I think that that I've been around that move through, you know, or let me say this, they appear to move on fairly quickly from that. But I know with me, for me, it is a process, and I know how close I was to my own mom and my sister. So sometimes I have a piece of her jewelry, I'll just wear it, you know. I didn't keep a lot of things at all, didn't want a lot of things. But there were a couple of things I did keep that were very important. And when I just need to feel like I'm walking with her, close to her, I'll put on that piece of jewelry. With my sister, I have a lot of her phrases. She would say some really interesting phrases that I still kind of pass on and spend time with her grandchildren, because I know family was so important to her. It was like at the top of her list. And she had to talk to all of her grandbabies, and she wanted to know how they were doing. And she was really in tune emotionally. So, those are things I think. Death is, I know we have an actual, when we're during new hires, you know, we bring them in, and during orientation, we have a segment on it. And we have some really good discussions surrounding death. I'm with you. I do think it's individual, but I also know that it's really, really good or highly encouraged to be around others when you're going through. And I know some people that, because you feel bad. I remember when Michelle Obama, I read her book, one of her books, and in her book, she was talking about the loss of her, the former First Lady was talking about the loss of her dad. She recently lost her mom, but she was talking about the loss of her dad. And they had a tight-knit group. And she just said, you know, death feels bad. I went to the hospital, and I just, no matter how much you intellectually prepare yourself, you know, if the individual is sick, you know they're going to transition. It still is painful. You just feel bad. So sometimes you do, and you're going to feel bad, and there are days that are going to be good, and there are days that are not going to be good, and you just have to have the space to be able to say, you know what, it's not good today, but tomorrow will be better. And I do highly encourage people to feel the feelings. You know, even when you're having those great moments, sometimes you cry tears of joy, or there's something that was said or did, and you have that moment. it's okay, just have those feelings.
Yes.
I used to say when I taught years, I don't know if I did it. I tried to, but I always would tell my young people, it's okay to have like 5 minutes a day. You take that 5 minutes a day to whatever it is, you just get that emotion out, and it's okay to cry, and it's okay to feel. It's okay to have those moments, because it is a part that, it's a tie that binds us, because that's something we're all going to do.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
There's no way to get around it. So it's okay to have moments and feel bad and those things. So
Yes.
thank you for reminding us. Yeah, we're at home. Yeah, we deal with that with clients, caregivers.
All of it.
I don't know if you get used to it. When I was teaching, they kept saying, oh, you're working with this population. This is what happens. I'll be honest, I just never got used to it.
No. I don't care if you even work in hospice. I believe those nurses, those care aides, I don't believe they get used to it, but they have accepted it. This is why I work in this particular specialty. It's a time and a season. So they have to have a different mindset going in working with individuals that are passing away.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
And so I
That's
never
a
thought I
thought.
could do hospice nurse.
I don't think I could do it.
No. Even when I had patients in the hospital that would pass, like if they were my patient for that day, but they were critically ill, and they were going to pass. Even that was hard. Even though I only had them for a few hours, for my shift, it's difficult. As being a human being, someone that actually cares. We know our world and our societies, whatever, where it is, where people sometimes don't care. But if you actually have a caring heart, you're going to have feelings. You're going to hurt. You're going to cry. Even though they're not your family member, they were just your patient for a few hours. You're like, I took care of this person for a few hours, even though they were in a coma state. But, it's still sad, So if anyone says they're joyful when someone passes away, I'm not sure if they're aligned. But anyway,
I don't. Yeah, I love what you said about the mindset, because sometimes I think maybe you experience that on the medical. I don't know, but somehow I think people, when you're around them, think you are to handle it better just because you're a nurse, or because you're a doctor, or because you know what I'm saying. And I don't know if it's title specific. I just think that there is a mindset that has to be surrounding death. And I hear some people say, well, it's according to what you believe spiritually, but I don't know. To be in the presence of people who pass and not have an emotion, I don't know, that would be that's kind of disassociating. I think at some point it catches up with you. It's like this. It's you're grieving the person who you love, that is sick, that's around you, that you know. Now, when my mom was here with me sick, I was like, I'm not shedding one tear, and I didn't. I was like, I'm not going to do it in front of her. I'm not going to be around her, because she needed every ounce that she needed to live and to be positive and script. But I was like, well, if that day comes, that was me. Everybody was different. Some people couldn't sit in front of her without breaking down. And they would just weep. And I was like, I don't know if that's what she needs, as she transitions through. But again, everybody is different in how they process and how they deal with that. And I do know that. But I don't think that one way is I'm not saying that one way is over another way. I'm saying like what you said earlier, we all just process it differently. How about grieving career changes or job losses? What about that?
It's the same type of grieving. Grievance, grief. We talked about that before we started. But at least there's hope. There's hope even when someone passes away. Literally, if you are a believer, there's hope on the other side. Some of us don't see it right away, but then we think about it later, like, oh, we're hopeful, we're going to see them again. It might not be anytime soon. It depends when you've been called on to meet the Lord. But in terms of jobs, loss of vehicle, people cry when they lose their vehicles. It's sad. I don't have a way to get to work. It's gone. But again, those type of griefs, prayerfully they're temporary, where you can get back up, get back in line, find another job, meet new people. So again, it's thinking, okay, I've lost this one, this door shut, but I'm going to have greater opportunities ahead of me. So again, that's putting the mind frame. Yes, I love that job. I was there for 15 plus years. That was just a chapter of my life. Now I need to move on to big and greater things, you know. Things are going to open up. You know, it all depends how you look at it. Things are going to be like out there, a vast majority of things for me, you know. So you think of greater opportunities, you can move forward a little quicker than sitting there and crying, oh me, oh my, how am I going to pay my bills? And my house is going to be taken away and all of those negative things. So it's all, how do I see this? Is it going to be a positive thing that I can move forth and get it?
Can it be
better?
a good grief?
No, that's not good grief. No. You're still grieving, but with the action plan.
Grief? Okay.
With the action plan. That's
plan.
what. Yeah, you have to have an action plan.
A more positive way, but not a good
positive action plan, and say, okay, I lost this job. Take deep breaths. How can I get another job here shortly? You know, and move on past that. Same as a car. You know, your car just got wrecked. Okay, I have no money, but I need to work more or get this job so I can get a car. But meanwhile, maybe I can catch the Uber. So you have to try to think outside the box and just not give up on life, you know. And, you know, being in this field with the in-home care, I've been in this field for so long. You've heard so many stories. People lose their vehicles, car got stolen, whatever the case may be, their world is ended. It's done.
Yeah.
They do not figure out anything else.
Yeah.
They don't figure out how to get to work. They do not come up with a game plan. Hey, my car was stolen, but hey, I'm going to catch an Uber, go see my client, and then I'll figure out things after that. Nothing. It's like their world just shut down.
Yeah.
It stops. And I've seen this over and over and over again. And technically, it's just the mindset. Someone has not taught these individuals life moves on. You have to get back up, get back in line, figure it out.
That's what, okay, so I think that's a good segue. That's where we're talking about time. That initial reaction or that shock, that anger or that shock that you feel. And then we're talking about, well, how long? So when that initial report comes in, you lost a family member, lost a job, lost whatever it is that you no longer have with you, that's that initial shock. And for some people, you're right, it knocks them down. And some people, yeah, people have a hard time getting up. Or they, you know, and so learning to have a plan of action, that's a really good thing. But grief can be so consuming or all-consuming that it might be a second. So I'm going to live this second. Let me get through the second. Okay, now it's a minute. Okay, I made it through an hour. I made it through the day. I made it through the week. I made it through the month. So it's a little bit at a time. And if you get up and it's not a good day, and we'll try again tomorrow, it's not an all or nothing. You know, like I was just feeling really bad. You might feel that way sometimes, you know, and give yourself grace as you go through the period, I think, because processing information takes a long time. And I'm just, again, I just know I'm one of those people that I'll go down and it'll take me a moment. I have to come back and reassess it and come back. Whereas my sister, who was a caretaker for a long time before, and she was the only person I know in my life that was so easy with death. She used to she was the one that would clean the patients at the end of life. She'd clean them up. She said, I always make sure they're nice and clean, and I make sure their appearance is neat. And she was the one in the family that would go to the funeral home and make sure the clothes are, she was that one. They look really nice, don't you think? Come on up, what do you think? She was so easy with it. I was like, And she's like, death is a part of life. And I had to go back and remind myself after looking at pictures. I was like, okay, yeah, she's right. But it still didn't make it easier. I'm getting better. Even as a teacher, those 6 years I told you, I was like, I need to do something. It's too much. It was too much compounded. Not that I didn't understand that death happens. It was just, I was like, okay, these young people, and probably too, maybe because they were young and they were mine. I was like, not because they're young, but it just took me a long time. So for those who are out there, that I love what you said. You do have to, I mean, life really does go on. You just don't think it do. You know what I mean? Because that moment stops in your mind. Think about a loved one you lost. I bet you can tell me date, time, where it was, when it happened. It just, it magnifies. That loss is magnified compared to other things that happens. And, you know, does that make sense in our life?
For sure.
So it makes you kind of stop and focus in on what's happening at that moment. And you just don't feel like, I'm not getting past this. You feel like that. I'm not getting, this is too much. Prayer and having support system. Let's talk about that.
Yes.
Let's talk about a support system. What do you say to that? What do we need to do?
Support system is very, very important. Very. I don't know how many varies there is.
Very, 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 very.
Important. Okay. You cannot do that alone. Being by yourself and you've lost a loved one. We're going to go with the extreme, the loved one. And not have someone there that can listen, that can just encourage you to keep going, just to pray with you, be there, night, morning, whatever time you need them. That's just humanly, I know some people think I can do this by myself, but I don't know humanly if that's really a safe zone. I would say a safe zone, because eventually you're going to break down. And that's why some people have to go through grief counseling. So if they don't have a counselor, they may have to seek a counselor just to have someone to bounce ideas off of and see what your feelings. It's a lot of emotions they go through. Like I said, there's 5 stages of grief. And you can go through all emotions in one day. I did, after I lost my mom, one day, like literally 1 hour, I had all 5 grief emotions. I was like, oh, this stuff is real. It's real. It's real. So I cannot say how real, that is not real. And so it was very strange just going through all those emotions. Like all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, that was hard. What gets me through a lot of things is prayer. God has been so good. When you stop to pay attention, okay, this person has gone. It's gone. Okay, I love them so dearly, but they're in a better place. They're gone until I get there, But it gives me comfort knowing that, hey, one day I'm going to go to this better place too, And so that is what gives me joy. And not everybody sees it that way. Never everybody have the same joy or however, and that's only God can give you that joy. But if you're not a believer, I say, just find someone to talk to. Don't be a loner, it's just not going to work.
Because if you live long enough, you're going to experience death. There's just no way around it.
Yes.
And even being a part of a community or your family or work environment, especially the work that we do, but even if it's not directly in the line of work, at some point, you keep living, you're going to encounter an individual of loss. I think about even like, the Super Bowl last year, Chiefs won, right? We had celebratory, parties all over the city. And then, even while we were there, we meaning collective Kansas City was at Union Station. We know what happened at that event. So changes in a second. Things are wonderful. Now things are different. So, and we were blessed in that, by the way. We did lose, there was one person who did lose her life. But considering what they were shooting and firing off, we could have had a really bad situation. So God had his hands on this city, and there were a lot of young people that were shot at that event as well. Like half of those victims, 26, I think, might have the number wrong, but that's a high number. So for us to really come out the way that we did, it was a blessing. And for the family that had their lives, God rest her soul. We had as a collective community is what I'm saying. Still, you're gonna encounter it is what I'm trying to say. There is just no way around being in the world and not having that direct, not being directly impacted. I like what you said by finding someone to talk to, a counselor, not feeling like you have to do it alone. It's in waves, you talked about these stages, you experienced them all in 1 hour. And I think that's what feelings do. There's some days you might not really have any days when you're dealing with grief. You might not at the surface deal with these things or deal with the emotions. And then there are some days you're like, oh my God, I can't get out the bed today.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Those, a lot of
so
those,
you got to push yourself to even, but I think connecting with other people to understand who care about you and who want to see you do well, those things are important, and making sure that you're having, just having those conversations. But the people who are in your life, recognizing even when they, you who are directly impacted may not want to talk, but just the fact that I'm right here.
They're there, listening ear.
I might not even say anything. I might just sit there with you, and provide that support.
Yeah, that's what Job's friends did in the Bible.
They did, didn't they?
He was going through. And that's going to be, again, he lost everything. He lost children. He lost his properties. He lost everything. Can you imagine going through that much loss in a short time period?
Some people, COVID, think about COVID and how COVID impacted
everything.
Some people lost it all.
So again, it's a mindset, and you have to have great faith to pull through to lose everything. But again, that's his story, and we all have a story. We all have a story about what grief looks like, how do we manage grief, how we've overcome grief, and still overcoming grief. It's a process. It's an everyday process. It's not one and done. I don't care how long ago you lost your loved one. It can be 20 years, 30 years. Things come back around where you will think about that individual because of, like you said, holidays, parties, whatever you've shared with that person. There's been a bond before, and so it's just taking the time to acknowledge it, not ignore it, and then move forward.
Move forward. Ooh, thank you so much. We've had a really good discussion today. If you don't mind, I'd love for you to give some information about Courageous Home Care and give our contact information and what we're doing. And then your encouragement. I think it's important, the encouragement you will provide for someone who's in those stages currently right now. So go ahead.
Again, we're Courageous Home Care. We're located in Lee Summit, 300 Southwest Knoll in Lee Summit, Missouri. We have our phone number, 816-699-2352. We are in-home where we go into individuals' homes and take care of them there. We also have an adult day program that we operate during the day for mentally or physically disabled individuals. And we also have ISLs, which is individual service living, where we have individuals that have mentally disabilities that have a community. So they can have up to 4 individuals in one house, and they live out in community with staff. So we do a variety of things to tap into everything. But you can reach us, again, on our website, or it's on the screen here. Or you can call our phone number, and we can assist you. And again, we like to be resourceful to our community, and that's why we do these podcasts. So if there's an individual out there that is suffering from grief, again, I'm not a grief counselor. I'm someone that has some information, and if I don't have the information, I'll try to figure it out and give you that information and be as helpful as possible. But again, you can always reach out, and we'd love to be of assistance there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank y'all for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week. Thank you for listening to us today about grief and our thoughts until we do this again next week. Thank you.
Thank you.